Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I just want to start this video by giving a huge thank you to all those people who have checked out the videos. I think I've got just over 200 subscribers now, which may not sound like a lot for many, but is huge for me. So yeah, thank you to everybody. I'm really enjoying making the videos and will continue to do so. The other thing I wanted to say was a big thanks to Ollie at Ollie's Astro over in Australia for the shout out in his last video. You should just definitely check out his channel. He's got some great content there and doing some awesome astrophotography, and I'll put a link to his channel there or there, not sure where I'm going to put it. But yeah, definitely check out Ollie's Astro. Now for this video I'm going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to do some planetary imaging. Now I'm not going to be using this rig. I'm going to be using my Meade 10-inch SCT because it has a much greater focal length than this one. This is 840 millimeters and the SCT is 2500 millimeters. And I'm also going to be trying out a new imaging camera for planetary imaging, a new QHYIII camera. So I'll get this one off the mount and stick the Meade on. So this is the camera I'll be using tonight. It's the QHYIII462c series, I think that's what it stands for, and it's the 462. And it's should be a bit faster than my previous QHYIII462c series camera, which was only USB 2. This has USB 3, so I'm hoping to get some faster frame rates, being able to download things quicker. So the Meade SCT has a focal length of 2500 millimeters, and I've got a 2x Barlow on the back that the camera is going to be shooting through, so that's going to give me a focal length of 5000 millimeters. Now that's great for getting zoomed nicely in on the planet. The problem is trying to find the planet when you have that narrower field of view. So it definitely pays to have a guide scope that you can either look through, or that you've got your guide camera attached to, that is really nicely aligned with your main telescope, so you can use that for finding the planet. And then when you flick over to your camera where you're going to be doing the actual videos through the telescope, that you actually have the target at least somewhere in that field of view, because you can spend a lot of time searching and searching for that planet. It can be a little bit off view and you just have no idea where it is. Oh, well, tonight I've been really lucky. The telescope has found it quite nicely. You can see it's not too far away from the crosshairs, and this is actually, it slewed straight to it. This is actually a view through the telescope, not the guide scope. So we're looking basically through 5000 millimeter focal length. So yeah, I'm very pleased about that, because trying to find it sometimes can be a real pain. Okay, so we're in SharpCap to record our video, and here's Saturn. You can see the Cassini cap. So it's jumping around a bit. It's going to get worse because I can hear the bus coming down the road and it's going past. There it goes. They rerouted the buses past our street while they work on another street, so it's very annoying. They come along very frequently. I've got a frame rate of around 41 frames per second. I could get that a lot higher, up by over 100, nearly 200 frames per second, but I try and keep my gain as low as possible. It makes the image a lot less grainy, or the video a lot less grainy. As a result, my exposure in milliseconds has to go up in order for me to keep Saturn bright enough to actually record it. And I've played around with various settings, and I've always found to get the best result with a low gain. And I don't mind if I've got 40 frames per second, that's still going to give me tons of frames to work with. But those things obviously have to be adjusted and balanced in order to keep your histogram up. I'm using a 640 by 480, a field of views, area should I say, of the sensor, so I'm not recording the whole sensor, so that also helps with your frame rate. And I'm just finishing off a recording here. I think it was, I can't remember if it was 8 minutes or 10 minutes, but I've got 24,000 frames on this one to work with. Obviously if it was Jupiter I would not be doing this length of recording. So yeah, I've seen a lot of people discussing, you know, the high gain versus low gain. Some people just say I'd use a high gain because you can get rid of the noise when you stack it, but I don't know, I just don't find I get as good an image. But if I pull up the gain here, you can see it's overexposing. I can bring down the exposure rate to a lower number of milliseconds, and now my frame rate pops up to 97, 98 frames per second. So I now can capture a lot more frames, but you know, I think that Saturn looks a lot noisier, a lot grainier, and when I've experimented between high gain and low gain, I've always ended up with a much better result if I use a low gain, so that's always what I try and do. Right, so now we want to process our video. We've collected our videos and we're going to choose one and process it further. So I'm going to open up AutoStack 3, which is free software available. It's a great piece of software. Basically you put your video file into the program, it will analyze it, tell you what are the good frames or the bad frames. You can choose how much of the video you want to use, so clearly obviously all the best frames, and then it'll align them and stack them and give you an image, a TIFF file at the end that you can then process further. So we're just going to open up the video file here, and I'm going to drag it across and just drop it there, and the video has appeared. Now over here you can grab the slider and you can sort of scrub through the video as it was being recorded, just to sort of have a look at it. Now you want to have this set over here to planet, because we are dealing with a planet. If you're dealing with a moon surface and craters or whatever, you would click on surface, but you want to have it on planet. And what I'm going to do is hit the analyze button, and it's just going to run through and analyze the video and work out what are the good, nice, clear frames and what are the terrible, blurry frames. So this is quite a quick process, even for a video this size, which has just under 25,000 frames. So here's your graph that shows you the sort of quality graph. There's a 50% line here where it decides that your quality has dropped below 50%, and you can see along here these are good frames, and there's things quietly deteriorate into the worst frames down here. So if I got the slider over here, it says this is my best frame. You can see the Cassini gap there quite nicely, a band of colour through there. And as we whiz it across to the end, you can see this is clearly the worst frame. And I think this is when one of the mini buses was going past and shook the whole observatory around. So, so there's a lot of, I've seen different ideas about how much you should and shouldn't stack, and I've seen some people say, you know, stack 75%, don't worry about what this graph shows, the more you can stack the better you'll get. But you know, if these frames are worse, so if the good frames are here and these ones are not so good over here, to me chucking a lot of these frames on top of all your good frames, it just seems that you would just end up sort of ruining your best frame. So I actually tend to take quite a small number of frames. You can see I've got 15 up here, which is what I used previously with this video of Saturn. And if I click, I don't know, say around here, which is probably around about 15% or so, we're still at 3,500 frames. Now the reason for that is this is quite a long video. It's I think it was 8 minutes or 10 minutes. Normally people suggest you only do sort of 2-3 minutes on I think sometimes 4 on Saturn, and to be honest, with the orientation the way Saturn is at the moment, where we're not really seeing the pole that clearly, most of the interesting detail are sort of horizontal bands of variation in colour across the surface. So because they're horizontally oriented, rotation of the planet isn't really going to affect that so much. So that's why I went for a longer video, because it's not going to affect that that band structure. If the pole was pointing more towards the Earth and you could see the hexagon more clearly, you would clearly want to go shorter. because you want to actually bring out the detail of that hexagon. If you image for 10 minutes like I have here, or 8 to 10 minutes, that would probably end up just being a sort of a round structure rather than a hexagon. So in this situation, I went longer, and I have quite a good number of frames that are of relatively good quality. Jupiter is a different story, of course. You don't want to go for very long on Jupiter at all. Some say 40 seconds, some say 60, others have pushed it to a minute and a half. Jupiter rotates very fast. It goes around every 10 hours. So while you're collecting even just a 60-second video, the planet is moving. And because it has such lovely cloud detail, you don't want it to move too much, otherwise you'll end up just stacking a whole lot of images on top of each other and blur out that movement. So if you want to go longer and you want to collect more minutes of data, you can do multiple 40-second or 60-second videos and then use WinJupos to derotate the videos so that they all line up. Certainly something you need to do if you're using a monochrome camera with colored filters, because if you did on Jupiter say 60 seconds on red, then green, then blue, over that time as 3 minutes has gone past, plus a little bit of faffing around with if you're fiddling around with the focus manually, you would need to use WinJupos, and I did that last year to derotate those RGB videos to give you one aligned image. So anyway, as I said, for this one I did 8 or 10 minutes, and I'm going to choose just 15%, and I'm going to just stack the best 15 and see the best image I can get. Now we need to put a grid on here so that it can use check out some alignment points. Now you can do that just by clicking on the planet as you like. I'll just right click and get rid of them, particularly if you got a little bit carried away and went out here and you didn't want that one. You can just right click and it'll disappear. You can vary the size of these squares that are being used for the alignment points. So 24 obviously is quite small, and 200 is clearly too big for an image like this. So I'd probably choose somewhere around, you can do 48, or you can ask it, you can just click down, up and down here to get the different size grids. So if we went to say 32, and then you can tell it to automatically place a grid, and it'll do a grid like that. That's quite a few points. I might just bump that up to 40. Gives me a few less. Let's see if we can go one more up to 48, which is the setting here, and that looks fine. So I'm going to, so in here you put in the percentage of frames that you want, or you can put in the total number of frames. So if I wanted to stack my best 2000 frames, I just put 2000 in there. If I want to stack the best 15%, I put 15 in, or I could do a range of percentages and see, you know, if 25% or 50% or 75% is better. So I could just put in, you know, I'll do 25 here, I'll do 50 here, and 75 over here. For the purposes of this video, I will just do the 15. A lot of people don't do a sharpened version. I'm just going to do it so you can see what it actually does to the image. Does a bit of sharpening for you. I'm going to RGB align it, get the program to do it. You can do that in the next program, which is Registex, but I figured I might as well just get AutoStack it to do it, and to save it into a folder. And I'm also going to drizzle the data by 1.5. So I'm going to hit the stack, and it's going to start running through these different processes. It's going to find a reference frame, it's going to align them, it's going to stack them. There's going to be the other analysis and recombination going on, and we'll come back when it's completed. Okay, it's completed. It's ticked all these different processes it was doing. It's given us a time of how long it took to do each one, and the longest was obviously the stacking. It took 2 minutes to do that. So we can now shut this down and open up the folder where we originally got the video from, and you can see now there's an extra folder in here called AutoStack It and percentage 15. Obviously if you did multiple, like you did 15 and 50% and 75%, you'd have 3 folders. One would be P15, one would be P15, one would be P75. but we needed 15%. So I got two images in here. One is the sharpened version, one is the non-sharpened. So just bring that up, and this is what our stacked image looks like. And if I bring up the sharpened version, just pop it over here, bring that forward, and we'll just zoom in here a bit. You can see that this one does have a bit more detail to it. It's a little more grainy, but that's okay. You could carry on processing from here, or you could process from here. We're going to use this one for the next part of the processing. So next is to go to Registex 6, another free program that's readily available, and this is gone to not the folder I wanted, so we'll quickly whiz down to the E drive, pop in here, and we're going to grab this image and we're just going to drop it straight on there. And here we have what we're going to work on. Now we're going to be using the wavelets tab for sharpening the image over here, and then there are some other things you can do over here, most of which I actually don't touch or even know exactly what they do. You can fiddle around with a histogram if you want to, brighten the image and darken bits, etc, etc. You can do an RGB align, which I'm not going to do because I got AutoStack it to do it, but if you hadn't ticked that box you could come in here and ask Registex to do that. I do the RGB balance, which brings up this little box here. Now you could fiddle around with the sliders yourself and move things around as you like, but I like to just click the auto balance and it will line these all up. You'll see a change in the color of the image here. There it is, it's a little bit warmer, and these are all aligned, so I quite like that. Now the next thing is to fiddle around with these wavelets, and again you just move the sliders around until you get something that you actually quite like. You can have this initial layer set down at 1. A lot of people do, and examples that I've seen, they have it set down at here, which means you then just got to move your sliders a lot further along to get an impact, and I think you can bump these sharpen bits and denoise bits up a bit to increase your sharpening, increasing your denoise, again to taste. What I've been doing, actually, I'll just try and bring this back down to 1, because if I go below 1 it looks really wacky. So we'll just stick at 1.1. If I put this on initial layer 2 to start from, and I've seen, I can't remember exactly who it was, whose video I saw, but they had it set on initial layer 2, and it means you can just move these much less to get a change, but obviously you've got to be very careful because you don't want to sort of go ripping across here like this, because you'll end up, yep, that's sort of sharpened it up and you can see the bands of colour, but there's a heck of a lot of noise here, so it's not very pleasant to look at. So you want to now come along a lot less, and then you want to just move these sliders along for the different layers and sort of sharpen things, as I said, to what you feel you're happy with. Not going too far, but far enough to bring out the detail, but not to sort of ruin the image. I'll take that one too far. You can see there's nice bands of colour showing up. This is where the hexagon would be. It's a sort of slight brown area with a greeny bit around it. We're not going to see the hexagon in this orientation and with this telescope anyway. I think you need a much greater focal length to see that, with the pole not really pointing towards us. But so yeah, just move these around until you're happy with it. I'm just going to bring things up a little bit further. I don't want to go too far, because you can actually fiddle around with the denoising and the colours, etc. once you get into Photoshop. If you want to, you can apply a little bit of denoise there, and it's just, I usually just put in a one click, about 0.05. If I go up to 1, it just sort of then blurs it quite a lot more. It's not bad, it's quite nice, but I'm just I'll give myself a little bit more room to move when it comes to getting into Photoshop. If you want to brighten your image, you can move the sliders around here or increase the contrast, etc. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it here. And the last thing to do is you want to hit do all. So all of these wavelets will be applied to your image, and then you want to save your image, and I can just call this Saturn for video, and it's going to be saved as a 16-bit RGB TIFF file, and I hit save. Now if you're doing multiple videos, multiple images from say one night, or you've got a very similar setup every single time, so you're getting similar quality videos, and you like the way you got these sliders positioned for your Saturn image, you can actually go down here and hit save scheme. And I saved one, well if I save one here and I just call it, I'll actually save one here called Saturn for video there. But you could just do whatever you like, click OK. I'll call this Saturn for video 2 and hit save. Now if these were all to be sort of reset back to 1, so we pretend we're starting again, and I'm not going to drag these all the way back accurately because that will take a bit too much time, but we'll just try and get back as close as we can, and you can see that the Saturn is sort of blurring up again. If you want to just use the same scheme over and over again, you can, or the next night for example, you can put load scheme, and we've got Saturn for video 2, click on that and it will automatically throw the sliders back to exactly where you were last time, and you'll get the same kind of sharpening to your image. I had a go at this earlier. I had a Saturn video here where the sliders were in a slightly different position, and it slightly sharpened it further. So anyway, we've saved our image, and the next thing we want to do is go into Photoshop and do some final tweaks on the image as to taste basically. So I've got the image in Photoshop and I've already done some adjustments to it because I'm not going to turn this into a Photoshop processing video. This was really just to show the acquisition of the video and what we do in AutoStack it and Registex. So I have already used some masks to play around with some and do some changes to the rings and also to the main body of Saturn. So I've taken some of the colour noise out of the rings and brightened them up a bit and increased the saturation and changed a few things just to bring out the various bands of colour here. Would spend a bit more time on it than I have, but the reason I wanted to bring this up into Photoshop was that one thing I suggest you always do, and that is just check your video for any moons that are lurking in the background, because you may not see them, but the camera has still picked them up. So I discovered this the other day when I was about 2 nights before this. I did some video of Saturn and was processing an image and sort of accidentally bumped the exposure up too high, and I saw these moons suddenly appear, and I was like, of course the moons, I should remember they're back there. So you can actually get those and bring those out in your image, in Photoshop, and I'll just show you what I mean. So here is our image, and if I just put in, say, where are we? I'm looking for exposure, and I'm just going to really ramp up the exposure, and you can see there are these little dots here. These are the moons. There's 3 moons that we can see. Now some of them are going to be hard to bring out because they're a bit dark, but we can certainly bring this one out. So now I've kind of already done this in a step, but by overexposing Saturn I found out where the moon was, and on another layer, I'm just going to turn that off. On another layer here I did a little mask, a very small mask right over where the moon was, and then just ramped the exposure settings up for the whole image, and it's only affecting that part. So I don't know if you can see in there, Saturn kind of looks like it's really, really bright and white, but because the mask is protecting all that area and just highlighting the moon, that when I do that, the moon appears. Now this is a little bit blurred because of the fact it was a 8 to 10 minute video, so I'd recommend if you want to get the moons, go a little bit shorter, so that they're tighter and rounder. But yeah, just always keep an eye out for the moons. You can get them into your image, and then if you use Sky and Telescope's app, which you can get for your phone, you can just set it to the time and the date when you're imaging Saturn, and it will show you a picture of exactly where the moons are and which ones they are, with their names, and you can then go ahead and label your final image, as I have done, and my final image, which is about to follow.